Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Calvarowski, and as always, the yang to my yin is here, Susan Hobson. Susan, out at the lake. How are you?
Do you have to ask? Do you really have to ask? How do you think I am, buddy? This state don't lie. It's our nation's birthday this weekend. I'm looking at a sunny dock right now. Oh, I know it's Friday in real time, but I am full of octane and so excited for our guest today. So let's go. Let's get this long weekend party started.
I thought you were going to say that you're now calm and zen at the lake.
Not a damn chance, buddy. Not a chance. Not yet. It always takes me a good, I would say 24 hours to fully hit my parasympathetic release. Nothing a cold dip won't fix later this afternoon. You know how I do. How are you?
Absolutely great. And obviously we have to start the show off with a quote. And so I have one here from Tim Grover, who's well known as the coach for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, and many others. And he says, people who don't pursue their dreams probably won't encourage you to pursue yours.
Oh, how true is that? I love this quote, but tell our audience why you picked this one in particular today.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we see a lot, right? Is folks that grow and they hit these next levels. A lot of times this means you have to transition to folks that are around you or set different boundaries, including your family. But this is the level of growth, right? And sometimes folks feel jealous or they're trying to pull people back, right? Because it's uncomfortable. And ultimately they're looking at themselves in the mirror and going, why am I not pursuing? And so I wanted to start there. It's popped up a few times this week. And then, of course, our special guest today, we have the CEO and high performance leadership coach at Game Changer Coaching, the author of Free Agent: Intangible Assets for Overcoming Adversity and Times of Transition, and former professional football player as well. As you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, in the background, a player for the Georgia Bulldogs. Rennie Curran's here. Rennie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Excited to be on and share with your listeners as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And what do you think about the quote?
It's true. And that was something I came across a lot. You know, when you take on, especially a career, or you're trying to start a business, or you're trying to do something that's never been done before, maybe you're the first person in your family to pursue that endeavor. A lot of times you are going to come across people who have a different mindset, people who never accomplished it, people who couldn't fathom that you could ever even think about doing something of that caliber. And maybe it's usually people who you grew up around, people who watched you when you were young, who can't really accept the fact that maybe you're trying to achieve something that they never did. So you're going to get maybe not that, attack on your dream, but it comes a lot of times in subtle ways. Like, how are you going to monetize this? Or are you sure you want to go this route? Like it's always like those questions that really pick at, your identity and the belief that you may have at that time. So yeah, I can definitely identify with that quote, especially when I was trying to get to even to Georgia. A lot of people didn't think I was going to get there, and then when I got there, people didn't believe I was going to play, and then they dang sure didn't believe I was going to play in the NFL. So it was a lot, and I can go on and on with how many times I've had to battle that even within myself. So yeah.
Whew. I know you got lots of stories about that one. This reminded me of when my high school guidance counselor laughed at me for wanting to apply to Princeton. I have to back this up, though, and I have to ask our high performance leadership coach, what would your advice be to someone coming through your door complaining of some of that resistance in their associations, shall we say? What would your advice be to them?
So my number one advice that I would say off top is that you have to just embrace it. This is what comes with being different. This is what comes with being a trailblazer. This is what comes with having a vision that is bigger than a lot of times your environment and your current circumstances. You got to know that there are going to be people who don't see the vision, who aren't aligned with that same mindset and belief and values. And that's okay. It's the reason why you have that vision is because you're the one that's supposed to bring it to fruition, and you're the one that has to do the work. You're the one that has to pay that debt that it takes. And you know, it's really part of what I say the price of admission or the rite of passage. I would say
Totally.
you got to navigate those naysayers, the negativity, the doubts. You got to do the inner work to the point where it doesn't affect you when people say things like that. And it's a journey, it's a process. There's never going to be a point that you get to where you're not going to have some form of that. Even when you become that leader that you want to be, even it may be the people that you're trying to lead who now do not want to be led. So at every level, I always tell those who I'm coaching or those who I'm speaking to that every level you have a new devil, you have a new challenge. So when you surpass that single level you're at, you can't take the same mindset. You can't take the same level of faith. You can't take the same habits. You have to make adjustments. You have to make shifts at that new level that you're at. So it's just, you have to accept that it comes with it. And if you can't accept what comes with it, then don't even worry about it. Just stay there where you are, and just keep doing what you're doing. But if you're trying to get to that next level, you have to know that those things comes with it.
Yes, well said. I feel like you can't afford it, right? Like or if you can't accept that this is going to show up, then you can't afford that level, right? Mm-hmm. I want to back this train up even further, Rennie, and I just want to plug our audience just into this pivot coming out of professional sports. You're a man after my own heart. That's when I launched on this mission, coming out the gates. But I'm curious, what inspired you to pivot into becoming this high performance leadership coach? What's that backstory?
Yeah. So it was, like I said, it was a journey. As you know, when you do pivot, for any of your listeners listening, you may be in this position right now, but when you first pivot, there's always that kind of season where you're just in the wilderness, where you just feel lost and you don't really know what to do next. And it may come in the form of transition out of sports. It may come in the form of job loss, it may come in the form of divorce. There's so many transitions that we go through in life. There's some who are empty nesters now who are listening. So there's that first kind of recalibration period. And so that's what I went through. I went through that time where I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know who I am. And so I really had to, at that point, start doing some serious work on myself and really just evaluating who I was. What are the things that make me tick? What are my skills? What are my abilities? And it really started there. And then once I started asking myself those questions, it put me on a path of self-discovery. So that's when I started reading a lot of books. I started going to networking events and workshops. I started sitting down with a lot of business leaders. And as I started peeling back the layers on myself, I realized that a lot of why I got into sports wasn't about just me playing linebacker and me scoring touchdowns and hitting folks. It was really about the leadership aspect. It was about the intangibles. It was about the mindset. It was about the strategy. It was about teamwork. It was about the culture. And so the more I started uncovering like those transferable themes and what I really, truly loved as part of my platform, that's when I started understanding that, man, I can actually take this and transfer this into the business world. And there's actual things that apply here that can add value, that I can monetize. And so from there, that's when I started actually turning it into a brand and something that I could actually do for other groups. So I started small, humble beginnings. It's something I talk about all the time. I did not start out by going out to companies and working with entrepreneurs and executives. And anybody listening, like, you got to be willing to start small. You got to be willing to humble yourself and start out at the foundation with the fundamental. Just like I started out with football and little league and not knowing my position, it was the same way in business. So I'm going to a small school and I'm not being paid anything. I'm driving 2 hours to a small town, and then I would go to a church, and then I would go to a Rotary Club. And many times I'm getting $200 here, $500 here to speak. I'm building my website, which I built from scratch on Wix. And I'm just continuing to make iterations and continue to build. And this was back in 2011, 2012. And so this is how long I've been doing. It's been crazy to say 12, 13 years now, but that's really how I got started. And from there, I always give my coaching clients this analogy that, just like you have Facebook, Instagram, all these platforms that started out with version 1.1, and then they go to 1.2, 1.5, and then they make small changes, a lot of changes you can't even see. That's basically the approach that I took, and I'm still taking. I'm still making iterations and little improvements and everything. But that's been my journey, and definitely haven't done it by myself. Also had mentors, other organizations that I partnered with and served as like an independent contractor. So that accelerated my learning and allowed me to get exposed to other industries and other individuals as well. So yeah, it's been a journey.
So, Rennie, you talk about a little bit about that improvement in 1.1, 1.5. Like, how do you think about your continuous improvement? And then also, like, I guess on the side is like, how do you think about your clients or guiding your clients along that journey?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, man. So the same way I think about my self-improvement is the same way I think about my clients' self-improvement. One thing I realized very early on that I'm sure you all realize as well is that you can only lead somebody as far as where you've led yourself. So I cannot get up on a stage or get in front of a client and fake it and pretend like I'm at this level that I really wasn't. So I look at self-improvement like it's a constant thing. I have to be constantly learning, have to constantly challenge myself. I have to hold myself accountable and have others that hold me accountable as well. So I have coaches that I work with. I have a therapist that I work with and speak with on a weekly basis. I'm gonna be straight up. I have to do that work if I am requiring that of somebody else. And so that's how I look at it is this is a marathon. This is something that you have to do. You have to be intentional about. This is also something that if you can get to a great place, and we see it happen all the time, great leaders who get to an amazing place, they get conditioned, right? Mentally conditioned, physically conditioned, emotionally conditioned. But just like an athlete, you take a couple weeks off, you start working on the fundamentals, and all of a sudden you're dropping off. You're doing things that you normally wouldn't. You're picking up bad habits. I look at it the same way. So I have to stay. I had to stay on it. And so every week I'm looking at how my week went. I'm looking at how my meetings went. I'm looking, even watching my past videos from speaking engagements or watching recorded coaching sessions that I've done, and just trying to pick up on the little details of things that I can improve. And that's the same thing that I do with my clients. So it's really, I really believe in that, man, that incremental gain, really evaluating yourself. On the other side of that, though, not to the point where it gets toxic, right? Because I believe you have to also celebrate those wins. You also have to appreciate the growth that you're making and the progress that you're making, because that can also lead to burnout as well. If you're just always trying to just find the next thing and you're just on this hamster wheel. And I see that a lot with many high performers. Like you never give yourself a chance to just stop and just appreciate the growth and appreciate those around you who have also helped you grow and things like that. So I try to be a little bit balanced with it as well.
It was one of my favorite strategies, I feel like, from sports was watching the game tapes. That's where that discipline around that feedback being gold, right? That's where that comes from. I love it. Rennie, what do you say to the leaders out there? I know you see these leaders too that say, I don't have time to work on myself. I don't have time to do the work. I'm under so much pressure from my board. You know, what is it? How do you challenge that type of client?
Man, it is very hard to challenge that type of client because 9 times out of 10, they lack the self-awareness to realize those things that they need to work on. And they don't even know that they don't know something. That's a scary position to be in, especially when it's backed by ego and it's backed by pride. It's almost like you have to let them go through that process of failing and then be waiting for them on the other side and just not, give them grace, because they're battling so much. And I tell leaders all the time, it's so much easier to handle a challenge when it requires a Band-Aid versus when it requires surgery. And
so true.
Yeah. And so, yeah, many leaders, the reason why they fail is not because of some, chaotic moment that happens. It's those small little things that they fail to address early on. And people are telling them, they're seeing the signs, but many times, and this is what gets many leaders, is they're actually experiencing success. So now that success is like attached to their identity. So it becomes even harder for them to make that change because them making that change, it's like it's tugging at their ego. It's tugging at, all the work that they put in before. So it becomes like it's an attack. And so it's a challenge. It's a very big challenge. And like I said, you almost have to wait till they have been humbled in certain cases before you can really, really get them to listen and offer those solutions to them. And that's a tough part about being a coach or somebody who's trying to pour into others is when you can see it, but they can't see it.
Rennie, I love this. I love this train of thought, right? Is sort of the trappings of success. And we see this, I mean, we see this in sports outright, is like a lot of folks that reach to the top, they don't have that next season where they repeat or right or they spend the whole summer partying.
Right.
But how do we get our leaders, even if they're on a trajectory and they're succeeding and they're rolling, how do we keep getting them to lean into the work? Because ultimately that's what keeps them on that path.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's like I said, it's a real challenge. And I believe that as leaders, we have to lead first. Like we have to exemplify what that looks like to lead in the right way. If we're not living it, if the success isn't evident in how we're moving, then a lot of times it's going to be hard to show that, to a leader or get a leader to buy in, just like any situation. And so nowhere else is this prevalent, more prevalent than in the sports world. Like I see, man, so many athletes. Me being a former athlete, playing the NFL, the hardest people I like the hardest people I have when it comes to getting them to get coaching is athletes, like guys who are in my same exact space. It's the craziest thing. And it's not until they get cut, they go through an injury, they're going through their transition. And it's like the worst of the worst time that they finally decide that they want to join on. And you want to be the key. I realize is that it's not about you necessarily, getting them to join in when they're in these moments of leadership. You want to be top of mind when they're in that place, when that pain has become so great that they're like, all right, I got to do something. You want to be the first person that they think about. That's what I've realized. Because many times when people are, like we said, they're in that position of success, they're bogged down with so many different tasks and things that are keeping them busy. They just don't even realize that they need that support, that they need to ask for help, that they're on a bad trajectory. So many times it's like you just want to keep planting seeds. You just want to keep, sending them that information, keep inviting them to the events, keep adding value. And then when the time is right, you're going to get that call. You're going to get that email, eventually. And that just happened to me actually a few days ago. I had a young athlete. His dad's been trying to connect me with him for the longest. He found out that he's not going to be able to play football anymore after his second year.
Oh,
yeah, just gotta, yep. And I could not reach him, but I looked at my phone a couple of days ago. Sure enough, now he wants to talk every single week. So many people, we have to get to that point where we're uncomfortable. We're so uncomfortable. Everybody has their different level of uncomfortability or discomfort that makes them change. And it's like until they get, some of us, unfortunately, until we get to that point, we're not going to pick up that phone and ask for help. Or we're not going to look for that resource or whatever it is. So yeah, it's just human nature.
Especially the high achievers' human nature. I feel like that's why that must be, because we've been looking at this question since we started the show, Rennie. It's like my biggest pet peeve is like, why do high achievers need brick walls and glass ceilings to awaken them to their untapped potential? Surely there's an easier way upstream. But no, the high achiever needs to be in the chokehold. And from what you're describing, it's their ego that has to surrender, right? Because the higher achiever, the more trauma informed, right? And all those trauma responses that are making them so ambitious and burning out, right? Are their trauma responses. Right. That is the ego. I want to shift our focus in terms of, because we're talking about how hard it is even to get the leader to the table prior to the chokehold. But how about the leaders who don't see the value of investing in their people's development and growth? How do you hit them with the sermon in that zone?
Yeah, that's another thing. And, just going back to that, there's two kind of issues that I see. So many times, the things that make you great as a leader in some cases can also be a weakness. So, and that's when extra hard because this thing you've actually been excelling with this. So it's not something that's been holding you back. It's like it's something that's helped you get to this level. So now to really peel back the layer and understand how this thing is actually a detriment, it's causing you problems in other areas of life. That's when it becomes very, very complex. And unless that person is really willing to humble themselves and really do that work, they're just not going to see it and they're going to fight to hang on to it. One of my challenges, was the fact that in order to be a high performing athlete, I had to shut off my emotions. Right. I had to, I couldn't
No
talk to a
pain,
coach
no
about how I'm feeling.
gain.
Like, yeah, no pain, no gain. If I'm on the field, somebody, I get flattened by a 300-pound, 6'6" offensive line. I got to get back up and go. That's perfect on the field. That helped me be a high performer. But now when it comes to me in my daily life, my relationship with my daughter, my personal life, I have no empathy. And so you see, one is man, it helps me be amazing. I'm killing it over here. I can't figure out why I can't manage relationships and why there's so much dysfunction over here because I'm taking this over here, what made me successful, and I'm trying to apply it over here. It doesn't work. And so that was something where I had to build awareness around, and it took time. And then the second thing that I see is that in certain cultures, you're rewarded and you prioritize certain things because you can quantify it and you can see it. So going back to sports, they'll invest tons of money in equipment, right? Because they can see the change in numbers, right? The change in the weight increase, how much the bench max goes up, the squat max goes up. We paid $10,000 to get this piece of equipment. We see the automatic results, right? But when it comes to things like leadership, culture, character development, you can't always see the direct return and the correlation. So it becomes so much harder to really, sell that to a coach that, hey, this is just as important as the strength and conditioning program. Like your leadership and character development, your culture is just as important as this. Most of them will put it on the back burner and things like that. So I believe that, and now there's so many resources out there now to where when you're having that conversation with a leader on the importance of, pouring into those who they're leading, there's a lot of assessments out there, right, that you can use and I'm looking at one right now, actually. There's a couple assessments that will assess your team and will show you kind of where there's a gap in trust and where there's a gap in alignment, right, between what positions they're in and what they actually have the capabilities to do. So when you can take those assessments, I believe, and you can track that with numbers and data to show that, hey, your lack of engagement, your lack of trust is costing you this. It becomes, yeah, you have to almost put it on the same level as something that they do quantify and something that they do invest in and get them to see, hey, like this is costing you. And just by you making this shift, you can save X amount. You got to speak their language. If you're not speaking their language, it's going to be you banging your head against the wall. Another thing I've seen too is, or a solution I've seen is when you can partner with somebody who already has their trust, who already has credibility with them as well. That's another way to kind of get in the door and really make waves without having to do it all yourself as well. So I believe strongly in strategic partnership.
Teamwork makes the
So
dream work.
awesome. But you know what, though? It's like trust is just not the same as chest day every day.
Right.
Don't miss those days.
Right. Exactly.
Rennie, if you could say anything to our audience of 2.0 heart-centric, human-centric leaders, especially in regards to the state of the world here in 2024, what would that counsel and advice be?
Boy, it is a crazy time in the world. I believe it's more important than ever to really be clear on your values, be clear on your vision, be clear on your mission, who you are and what you stand for. What are your convictions? You got to be clear on that because there is so much nonsense out here. There's so many distractions. Every time you pick up your phone, somebody's trying to sell you on something, some new concept, some new program. I mean, there's just so much out there that's tugging at, your identity. And so more than ever, you have to be clear on those things, and you have to make sure that you're also protecting your mind, protecting, I call it your mental diet, the thoughts and the ideas and the content you're consuming on a daily basis. Because it really is, we're in a time of information overload, right? So that would be my number one thing for any leader, because challenges are going to come, different things are going to happen in your life that really will test you in terms of your values and your vision and your beliefs and things like that. And you have to stay true to who you are, because the number one thing that I see where leaders lose a lot of credibility is when they're saying one thing, or they're trying to, promote one thing, but then their actions do not level up with that, especially when there's challenges, right? And the minute there's a challenge, the business starts becoming shaky, then they show what their true values are. And that's the number one way to lose credibility, I believe, if you're not, when those moments come up, moments of adversity or moments of success, and then you lose yourself because you were never clear on who you are. People can't trust you because they don't know who you're going to become when things are bad or when things are really, really good. So that's what I would really, really highly recommend to those who are listening right now. Get clear.
Amazing. And Brandon, we have to ask you this question. With everything you're building, your vision, your future, your mission, what do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, I think about that all the time, every morning that I wake up. And I honestly want my legacy to be that I maximize everything that the good Lord gave me, and I showed other people how to do the same exact thing. Like I didn't waste one opportunity. I didn't waste the relationships. I managed everything well. I got everything I could out of my potential. Like when I think about my career as an athlete, 5'10" and a half, 5'11", considered too short for my position, was not expected to do much. Came from a situation where both my parents, immigrants from Liberia, knew nothing about football whatsoever. But I got the most that I could out of this 5'10" and a half, 5'11" frame. I went as far as I could go. I left it all on the field. Like I can look myself in the mirror now and know that like there was nothing else Rennie Curran could have done to control the situation. I controlled what I could control. And at the end of my life, I want people to say that about me, that man, I made the most out of it. I made an impact. Those who I was supposed to serve, I served them. I got the most out of what God gave me, and I showed other people how to do that. And that's the number one thing, is I take that serious. Both my grandparents were the first people in their families to be educated. I think about that every day. If they hadn't made their decisions to take it a step forward and to change the trajectory, I wouldn't be talking to you all right now. Like how powerful is that? I literally would not be on this call. I would not exist. And so I'm thinking about now, man, what do I need to do to push my legacy for my children's children, to build them up so that, man, when they get to that position, they can say, man, my great grandfather did this. And because of this, we're now here. So pushing that thing forward is something that really, really I think about in terms of legacy.
I love that. And I know Susan loves that too. Now, for folks out there, if you want to connect with Rennie, you can head on to his website, renniecurran.com. We've also dropped his LinkedIn in the podcast notes. Is there anywhere else you want folks to find you, or anything you're working on that you want to share with us?
Man, you covered it all. I really appreciate you all. Website's there. I also have a foundation that helps athletes become leaders on and off the field. So we're doing a lot of great things there. I know a lot of people have heard about like name, image, and likeness, NIL deals. We're trying to change that whole narrative. We're focused on NIL, but educational NIL opportunities. So connecting athletes to companies that want to hire them in the future, where they can learn about the industry. They can do an externship, which is different from an internship, a 2-day experience where they can go in, do job shadowing, meet with the leadership, and just get exposed to something outside of their world of sports and whatnot. So that's another thing I'm doing. And one of the programs I'm also working on is actually teaching leaders and entrepreneurs how they can build their business and build their brand through public speaking. So I have a full program that's 8 weeks that will teach them really everything about the public speaking business and the industry. So whether you want to do it as a full-time career, or whether you want to do workshops and want to do podcasts and just want to leverage public speaking in order to grow what you're doing. That's something else I'm doing. So if anybody's listening and is interested, would love to help there as well too.
Amazing. And obviously hit subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project on your favorite podcast platform. And we're making a pivot to the show soon. And so there's going to be some exciting new guests coming up. So we'll just leave that as a cliffhanger.
Planting seeds.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And then for all things executive coaching and leadership development, head on over to elitehighperformance.com. Susan, where do you want to leave us today?
I want to go full circle moment. If people are balking at your dreams, or actually if they aren't balking at your dreams, are you really dreaming big enough? I kind of feel like that's one of the things I look for when I get to my next levels, right? I absolutely love this interview. That clarity is power. And please don't wait for the ticking time bomb in order to develop and cultivate that clarity. You heard it from Rennie. This is why we're here. We're here to not only max out our bench and our squat, but our legacy and potential too. And this interview is ripe with strategies that can certainly get you started on that journey upstream, so you don't have to experience the chokehold. How about you, sir?
For me, it's what I obviously resonate with Rennie is the work. And I also go to therapy every week, and I read I actually listen to a bunch of books when I'm running. Yeah. But like I listen to audiobooks, I read articles, I'm always interacting with leaders. Like this is what we do. And I think a lot of times, especially now in the age of social media, it's, hey, we can transform you in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or a 4-day program or a weekend. And it doesn't work that way. It takes
just
that
start.
Deliberate practice day after day, week after week. And it's not that it's hard or bad. This is the journey to growing. And it's exactly what Rennie says. Start with your fundamentals. You're going to grow. The work will change as you evolve, but that's the nature of the journey. And so get inspired, get on that field and do the work. Rennie, it was amazing to have you on the show, and thanks for joining us today and sharing.
Yeah, likewise. Y'all keep up the amazing work that you're doing. Thanks so much for having me on. If I can ever, help you guys or support you guys in any way, always here. So really appreciate you all again.
Wow, thanks, Rennie. Teamwork, dreamwork, buddy.
That's
Thank
it.
you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.